Hi everyone, how's it going? If you love Bigfoot stories, you have found your people. We have got a group of people that follow along and have a lot to do with this channel who love Bigfoot stories, and we're your people. We are your people, and I want to let you know that. Hey, don't forget, look down in the description. Take a look at our Teespring store. We sell t-shirts, Bigfoot t-shirts that are really cool. We sell stickers. All that information is in the description below. And I'm going to quit running my mouth and we're going to get into some stories. All right, here we go. Okay, here's a brief encounter from Michelle, who actually has had an encounter in Hawaii. People say that the Bigfoot lives in all 48 states, or 49 states, all but Hawaii. But apparently there is some activity in Hawaii. Michelle writes, in the late 70s, I was a flight attendant, and I was on vacation in Hawaii. Another friend and I rented a camper to visit all the beaches. We drove through sugarcane fields to get to the beach, and we parked facing the water. I got out and walked into the back of the camper. Before me were these giant cliffs. I suddenly saw a very large animal standing high up on a ledge. I stared amazed at what I was seeing, and I knew that it was looking at me. It seemed like it lasted for quite a long time, and a few loud heartbeats. Without moving my eyes from the creature, I watched it take a very smooth sidestep behind a boulder just as my friend came around the corner of the camper. She looked up to where I was looking just as it took its sidestep. Immediately I said, "What did you just see?" She had a very funny look on her face. "I just saw it for a second," she said, "but it looked like a big ape, so I know that we had seen a Bigfoot." Later, I attended a lecture by a Native American lady that said that Indians have always been in communication with these things and have respect for them, and that they are highly intelligent and they are healers of other animals. They live and travel through the inner earth tunnel system. I have an article about this lady, but I haven't dug it out since the 1980s. Anyway, I was glad to find your channel. It is good to tell this story about a few minutes of my life that I will never forget. I felt no fear but a deep stirring when I was looking at this creature, and I feel fortunate to have had the experience. Michelle, I would feel fortunate too, and in Hawaii. So, hey, there you go. I don't know if there's any other reports that you guys have heard from Hawaii, but there's one. There's one. Michelle, thank you so much. That was it's a great encounter. Thank you, ma'am. Here's an Oklahoma encounter sent to me by Scott. He writes, every summer I would go spend 2 weeks in Oklahoma with my grandparents. 1 week with my mother's parents and 1 week with my father's parents. My father's dad had land out by the lake about 14 miles north of Broken Bow, Oklahoma. The community name there is Hochitown or Hokietown. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. The third day I was there, I was trying to get my grandfather to go fishing with me. He didn't want to go, but he offered to drive me a mile down the road to drop me off at the lake. So we got everything together and we left. He dropped me off and then left for home. I began fishing and wasn't getting any bites. He had dropped me off at about 4 p.m. So at this point, it had been 3 hours of fruitless fishing. I had actually wanted to take the boat out, but I was only 13 and my grandfather wouldn't let me take it alone. As I continued casting, I began hearing things falling in the woods around me. It was sporadic, so I didn't pay much attention to it at first, but it persisted and the objects dropping from above seemed to be getting larger. A few minutes later, there was a huge splash in the lake right in front of me. At just that moment, I heard a loud crack. It sounded like a tree being snapped over, and the noise came across the road from where I was. The road ran directly into the lake. I was on the right side, and the noises coming from the left side if you were facing the lake from the middle of the road. After hearing the snap, I wasn't yet afraid, but definitely got that something abnormal was going on. Then I heard a loud crashing sound tearing through the woods, as if a large animal was charging in my direction. I circled around the small peninsula, and I was on back to the road trying to get a better look at what was making all that racket. It, whatever it was staying hidden. I sat my gear down and I walked across the road. Then slightly into the woods, silence, no birds, no insects, no animal noises at all. At this point it was getting close to 6:30 and the sun was starting to set. I still had to walk a mile through the woods down this road alone to get back to my grandfather's house. So I grabbed up my gear and I started walking. As I got about a quarter mile up the road, I heard another loud snap of a tree, but this time it was only a short distance away. And it was so loud, I'd almost liken it to the crack of thunder. I began to hear some gruff breathing. Now I was getting worried. I picked up the pace. I was double timing it. I had made it halfway off to my right when I heard a howl. I stopped to look back. The sun was rapidly going down and I began feeling panicked. As I stood in that road, I began hearing heavy footsteps coming towards me. The sound came from the ridge above me. I turned and started walking again. The heavy footsteps continued. I stopped. I looked back and they stopped. I turned again towards my destination and made a full-out run. Then a large log landed in the road in front of me. So I didn't slow down. Once I was 3/4 of the way back home, I stopped again to check my flank. I could feel whatever had been following me was still watching intently. I had felt this way from the moment the first objects fell at the lake. I had to find something to distract this thing, some way to get it off my tail, or the sun was going to set and I was going to be stuck out there alone. So I threw down my fishing gear and tackle box, hoping this would keep it curious long enough for me to get away. I ran the rest of the way home and got there just as the sun went down. I relayed the story to my grandfather, and when I got to the part about dropping the fishing gear, he said, "Well, you better go get my fishing gear." I said, "I'm not going back out there alone after dark," but he wasn't having any excuses, even with monsters in the woods. So I went back after dark down to the lake road without a flashlight. "Scott, why did you go without a flashlight, bro?" "Man, when I got to the spot where the fishing gear was, the rod was broken in two, the tackle box had been unlatched, opened, and all the lures had been pulled out and were neatly laid out in the road. I had just got them all back in the tackle box when in the far distance I heard a scream. So I grabbed everything up and ran back to the house. I never saw what followed me that day, but it didn't behave like anything I had ever encountered. When I got back to my grandfather's house, he tried to say that it was a bear or a deer. But whatever it was, I could hear it walking bipedally. The crunching, the thumping of footsteps, the same sound made when it charged at the lake. I had hunted a lot from a young age. I thought I knew every animal in these woods. But this was just one animal no one likes to talk about. I guess it's just too scary to fathom. I didn't know it at the time, but that wouldn't be my last encounter. And next time I would like to take the role of aggressor. But that's another story. Scott, would love to get your second encounter where you took the role of aggressor. Yeah, that's something that's one of those encounters where you never see anything, but you know it's there. You hear it, you feel it, but I'm glad you got out okay and still would love to get your other encounter. Thanks again, buddy. This encounter is sent to me by Tyler. He grows up in southwest Arkansas. He writes, "The first time I ever had an encounter with this thing, I was a little boy about 10 years old. I grew up in a rural area in southwest Arkansas called Mount Pleasant, just on the other side of Mercer Bayou and Boggy Creek, where people have reported Bigfoot encounters for over 100 years. As a boy, I would roam all over those river bottoms, hunting with my little .22 for squirrels and rabbits and whatnot. One day I got up and got dressed to head out into the woods. I got down the old gravel road a little ways to cross into some hardwoods where the squirrels seem to always be. I noticed an awful smell when I turned the corner, but I figured it was just a dead animal or hogs. When I looked up about 30 yards ahead of me, a huge creature crossed the road and stopped just shy of the wood line and stared at me. And as I froze with fear, he was at least 7 foot tall, with a thick body and with coarse, dark brown or black hair covering its whole body except its face. I hollered at it, and he just kind of stepped slowly into the woods. I turned and ran full speed towards home. I got home and I woke my mother and dad up and told them what had happened. Mom was skeptical because I was a kid with an active imagination, but I could tell by the way my dad looked at me, he knew something was up. I was beside myself, shaking. I was so scared, so Dad got up and took me into the kitchen and said he believed me because he had seen one of these things too. I asked him what it was, and he said he didn't know, but that he didn't think it would hurt us, and he just called it a watcher. I pressed him on the issue to tell me about what it was, and he just wouldn't talk about it, and he won't still talk about it until this day. Lord, I'll never forget how human it acted and the way it looked at me. It terrified me for about a year, and I wouldn't go into those woods unless my dad was with me. I didn't see that thing again until about a month ago. I have always hunted deer and other critters there and continue to do so with my sons, and I've never had any other encounters until early November of this year. I had been scouting the area for a spot to bow hunt, and I found a new spot with a lot of rubs and a line leading into a sort of deadening about 2 miles into those bottoms. It was pretty wet at the time, and the mud by the water hole, there were 100 deer tracks and other animals in those woods. So on the 3rd of November, I went back into those woods with my bow and found a spot about 20 minutes before sunrise. I stayed there until about 11:30 with absolute silence, and I mean the woods were eerily still. So I went home and ate and returned around 3 to hunt that evening. I sat there as before in total silence, not even a squirrel chattering. Then I heard a huge crash, and I saw a small cedar tree shake. I thought it must have been a buck making a rub, so I put my release on and put it on my string, and I waited. And I waited. The woods were so thick, visibility was limited. I sat there for about 45 minutes when something hit my stand. I stood up and looked behind me, hugging the tree, when I see what is clearly something huge standing in the thicket at the base of a tree. My heart started racing and I stood stone still. It crouched, and then it threw a piece of wood underhanded a short ways in my direction. So I called out at it, thinking it might be a prank or something. Then it stood up and it moved to its left a couple of steps, and then it started walking away. It had a huge body and dark brown, maybe dark red hair color. I couldn't see its face, and it didn't quite look like an ape. It had intelligent eyes. I stood there shaking and in disbelief when I heard a kind of a higher pitched sort of howl. I heard another howl in a different direction. There were more than one, and I slid down that ladder, leaving my bow behind, and made a beeline for my four-wheeler, which was probably a half a mile away, parked on an old logging trail. I got to it finally after looking over my shoulder every few steps and hauled back to the house. I told my uncle when I got back that I had seen something in the woods, and he got a riff out of it and got on the four-wheeler a little more than reluctantly. I don't know what I thought we'd find, but I made him go with me. When we got there, we saw no tracks or any sign at all, except a sapling tree broke off about 7 feet off the ground. I'm just trying to make sense of what I saw, and I'm still in disbelief about it. My uncle and my grandfather and even my wife think I'm crazy, and I know exactly what I saw. And as a man who has spent his whole life in the woods, I can tell you it wasn't a bear or anything else, and I just want to try to make sense of it. Tyler, I would want to make sense of it too, man. I mean, twice in one lifetime is remarkable. And both times in the woods, and you're down there by those Boggy Creek swamps, and that's seems to be a real active area. So thanks for sending in the encounter, Tyler. I really appreciate it. Hey everybody, how's it going? just thought I would do a short little video. First time I've ever shown my face on camera. I don't like being on this side of the camera. I don't know why. I just don't like it. But I wanted to do a video real quick, just a real short video telling you that we got plenty of videos coming up. I've just, as usual, I've been just buried with work the last few weeks, and I'm still buried with work, and I'm late putting my garden in, and there's a lot of other stuff that I need to do around my place that are taking a high priority. But starting next week, hopefully I'll get back to 2 videos per week, and I easily have over 100 stories to do over the next year, just from people submitting stories up until this date. I've got over 100. And for those of you who have sent in stories, just be patient. I'm getting to it. I'm still going back and getting stories from December. What happened to my focus there? Okay. From this past December. And if I see a really, really good one, I'll pull it up. But there's no really rhyme or reason to how I do it. I just read through them. If I find some good ones, I put them in a video. But I'm going to get to your story. Thank you for sending it in. And thank you for all the really super nice comments and all the people who have sent me really nice emails. I'm not sure, I don't think anybody's ever been quite that nice to me before. And I'm not sure how to handle it. But I really appreciate it, and I'm trying to think of others. I'm out here riding my bike. I ride my bike every morning with my dogs, and we do about a mile and a half back here in the woods. That was a crazy one. And so we're back here doing that, and I had my phone in my pocket and it just hit me. Haven't put up a video in a couple of weeks. I just want to say hi to everyone and let you know everything's good. I love doing this channel. I love the topic of Bigfoot. I love the stories about Bigfoot. I love it. And if you come here to listen to good stories, you have found your people. We are your people. And if you don't care about all the proof and pictures and all that stuff, but you enjoy good stories. You know, storytelling is an ancient practice. It goes back into antiquity since the beginning of time, since man first came on the stage. Stories make us who we are. And but we still got people that go, no pictures. But if you've come here to listen to great stories, you have found your people. And so I just wanted to do a quick video, and you can probably see why I don't do many of these, because I just don't have a whole lot to say. But thanks for watching. Thank you so much. That's all I can say. And we're going to keep rolling, keep this crazy train on the track. All right, I'm going to get back on the trail here with the dogs and get moving. I think they're ready. All right, here we go.